Hey fam, welcome to Life More Abundantly, the podcast where we talk Black health like we talk everything else, real, out loud, and with love. I'm Dr. Eboni Haynes.
And I'm Dr. Tynisha Drennon.
We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into today's episode.
Let's go.
All right, T, what's up first today?
Unfortunately, I feel like we need to talk about all these Black women who have been making headlines and filling our social media feeds who have allegedly, in quotations, been killed this month by their intimate partners / husbands. I know I've seen at least 4 or 5 on my time feed.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The most recent one that I've seen related to Dr. Serena Fairfax, and that name may not be familiar to folks, but definitely her husband is very familiar to folks, right? He was the former lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia. And I think about 5 or 6 people text me yesterday with that. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you sure we're talking about the same person? But sure enough, former lieutenant governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax. Last week, I think it was, I heard about the Charlotte pastor being killed by her husband, Pastor Tim Cullum. And then I think it was in the same week that I heard about the Florida Vice Mayor, Nancy Mateo Brown, who had allegedly been killed by her husband. And I think what shocked me about that situation was that their family had buried her brother just
Oh,
a couple months before that happened.
wow.
And so that family was definitely going through it. And then we heard about social media influencer Ashley Robinson.
Yeah, allegedly killing herself. And now they're looking at her partner as a person of interest, and they made him surrender his passport.
Yeah. So it's just been a whirlwind the last 2-3 weeks with these stories.
I think it definitely brings up a lot of things. Obviously, domestic violence and how we need to talk about, see the warning signs,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to any red flag,
Mm-hmm.
as well as gun violence is rampant in this country. We have more gun violence
Right.
than any other country in the entire world. We can assume or guesstimate that these persons have registered firearms, but this is still an ongoing issue where
Mm-hmm.
we need to get a better handle on gun violence in this country. And so
I
I just
agree.
wonder, what is going on, especially in our community. We didn't used to. It didn't
This
seem
was
like
unheard of.
yeah, we would do this, especially a murder suicide. The lieutenant governor then turned the gun on himself and killed himself. Listen, leave me out of it. Kill yourself. And their children were in the home, so not only to lose both parents, but to face the trauma of knowing that this happened while you were right down the
Right.
hall. It's just sad. It's sad for all of these families, but we really need to take a look at several things, including mental illness.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And stress, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the
Mhm.
episode. But one of the things that seemed to me when I was reading all of the stories was that all of these families were dealing with a high level of stress,
But who
stress
not?
in the relationship, stress in um, work situations, just stress all the way around. And so I think it does drive the need for us to talk about stress in all of these different contexts.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all under a tremendous amount of stress, especially
Mm-hmm.
with the economy being what it is, the political
Ooh, child.
climate that we're in,
Workplace environments being what they are.
workplace environments. We're going to talk about the new dynamics of relationships that are
Mm-hmm.
becoming popular. And so all of these things place tension, even in the most functional homes, right? But
Right.
um, when you have some dysfunction or mental illness or, just keep piling on, unfortunately, domestic violence seems to happen.
Mm-hmm.
NBC Washington provided some work that saying that murder suicide happens 11 times a week. That's more than days in a week. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And kill yourself. Let me mourn you. We ain't got to go together. This is.
Yeah. Yeah, they also mentioned that 2 out of the 3 incidents of murder-suicide happen among romantic partners, with 92% of those incidents being perpetrated by males.
Mm,
And like you mentioned earlier, 86% of them involve guns. And so the other piece of this is a need for us to talk deeply about gun violence, because one of the things I noticed in at least the Fairfax report was that the gun was purchased legally.
mm.
As a matter of fact, this became an issue that was raised in their divorce proceedings about how the husband purchased a gun using money that was set aside for one of their kids' programs
Oh,
that they
wow.
were supposed to participate in. Yes.
Going
So
through a
it
divorce.
they were going through a divorce and he had
Okay.
just lost custody. And part of the reason why he had lost custody was because he had allegedly begun drinking heavily
Mm,
as a result of the sexual abuse allegations against him while he was still lieutenant governor.
oh,
And so there's just a lot of stress in this particular marriage, but that's not the only family that was dealing with a whole lot of stress.
right.
Um, when we think about some of the other cases, as details are continuing to come out, it looks like, there potentially was some jealousy. There potentially was some challenge in dealing with being in a higher profile relationship. Right. The stressors that come from being a public official, being a pastor, right. Being an influencer.
Mhm.
And so, all of those things do add an additional level of stress on a relationship.
You're right. And jealousy comes into play, when Black women, especially, become successful and they're doing well in their careers.
Maybe the primary breadwinner.
Yeah, a lot of times it becomes intimidating and even emasculating to
Mhm.
the male counterpart in relationships, which, unfortunately can heighten a domestic violence scenario as well.
Mhm. Yeah. So we definitely recognize that we've only highlighted 4 of the stories that we've heard about over the past 2 weeks, but this is an issue that is more common than we would think. But, I think it's just a reminder for us to be intentional about staying in contact with people.
Mhm.
You know, Being intentional about asking questions when behaviors start changing,
Right.
making sure that we know people's histories.
If you see something, say something. I mean,
Yeah.
and again, if you see a red flag, a lot of times we will push down a red flag and be like, oh, he's just having a bad day, or, oh, I got on his nerves, but if your stomach starts twisting, like our intuition is real and we need to
Yeah.
pay attention to that.
Gotta pay attention to it. All right.
Well, our thoughts and our prayers go out to those families and families who have not made it into the headlines. That's a very jarring statistic that this happens 11 times,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
11 times a week. It could be you, me, a friend of ours, family member.
Mhm.
So
That's right.
attention to that.
Absolutely. So if you are dealing with high levels of stress, intimate partner violence, abuse, please reach out. Therapy, counseling, connecting with friends, letting people know what's going on with you, because we want everyone to stay safe.
Absolutely.
All right, so this week in Black History, we have a theme that kind of threads throughout each of our stories, and that thread is access. So, access to the courts, access to college, and access to civil rights.
Oh, I like it.
All right, so on April 23rd, 1872, Charlotte E. Ray became the first Black woman lawyer admitted to the D.C. bar.
Well, that sounds like a glass shattering moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It marked pretty much a landmark first when it comes to that intersection of race, gender, and the legal profession. I can't even imagine all of the challenges and hurdles that she had to overcome in
I was about to
1872.
say, not 1972,
Right.
1862. Oh my goodness.
1872, 9 years after the Emancipation Proclamation.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That makes it even more amazing.
Mhm.
A friend of mine's son, not even a daughter, but a son is graduating from law school next month. And he told me that still in the legal system, African Americans still only make up 5% of all the
Mhm.
parties. So to think in 1872, Charlotte Ray was shattering glass ceilings, and we're still so far behind.
Still so far behind. Yeah, that Reconstruction era in the US was really instrumental in creating opportunities, new opportunities for Blacks in the country. And of course, there were lots of efforts, as you all know, to dial all of those back because we can't have that many Black people in these roles of
That part.
authority, right? Yep.
That
And
yeah, we
so
have the most qualified in these positions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
that's right, that's right. But, her admission to the bar in DC, in the nation's capital, I think is symbolically significant
Hmm,
because practicing there, like where US government is headquartered,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Practicing there, I think really does set the tone for legitimacy and visibility.
mhm,
And so it
mhm.
was a really big deal for her to be an attorney there in DC at that time.
Wow.
All right. So then what else? On April 25th, 1944, the United Negro College Fund was incorporated. And so for those of you all who may not be familiar, the UNCF or the United Negro College Fund is instrumental in pooling financial resources together to support private HBCUs. So this founding of UNCF was really spurred by World War II, right? So many of our Black institutions, most of which were established right after emancipation, many of those institutions faced financial difficulties, especially during the war years. I mean, everybody was experiencing
Right,
difficulties, white institutions and Black institutions, but
right.
particularly our Black institutions were pretty vulnerable. And at the time, the president of Tuskegee Institute, Dr. Frederick Patterson, proposed this joint program that really worked to centralize maybe this fundraising effort for Black institutions so that the schools wouldn't have to compete for resources that at that time were really scarce. So he built a coalition of folks to help with this effort. He had folks like Mary McLeod Bethune join him to try to raise money, and that's what they did.
Wow. And I remember when I was growing up at UNCF, it used to have a slogan that said, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." They would
Mhm.
ask for contributions
Yep.
that way. Do they still, do that type of work?
Yep.
Well, I definitely don't see them doing commercials anymore, right? So how do they get their funding? How do they distribute funding?
Yep. So they are still very much alive and well today. The UNCF is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and they support 37 private HBCUs today. They still provide funding for not only scholarships, but also operating funds for HBCUs.
Uh-huh.
And they do a lot of work, right? They are still very much focused on making sure that we're not wasting the incredible knowledge and creativity and talent of Black minds, but also ensuring that Black people can go to school. But they definitely are still alive and well today. So I'm really excited about the work that UNCF does, as well as the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which is a similar organization that
Oh,
supports a different set of schools, Black
wow.
schools. So, yeah, they are definitely still very much active and raising tons of money to send folks to school and to support their member institutions.
I love it. Thank you for that drop in Black history.
Hmm.
I think definitely educating our listeners. I mean, I knew about the UNCF, but didn't know all the work that they did and continue to do. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And particularly with this particular administration, we need all the help and resources we can get to kind of combat some of the reductions in
mhm.
funding that come from the feds and these attacks on DEI efforts.
Absolutely. And now that you're telling me that they still distribute money amongst HBCUs, I wish when philanthropists were allocating their funds, then that they might think more about contributing to these two organizations versus a particular college. Because we know, for instance, Morehouse and Spelman seem to get the majority of the dollars that come from philanthropists. Not saying that other celebrities and philanthropists don't donate to other HBCUs, but they get the bulk of the money. And so I wonder if those persons contributed their multi-million dollar efforts to the UNCF and to the other organization that you mentioned, if it would help more evenly distribute the wealth among each.
Yeah, that's a good point that you raise. I think sometimes that gets lost in the sauce. So, one of the probably most well known donors here, at least in modern time, definitely because of the amount of money that she has given, Mackenzie Scott, the former wife of Jeff Bezos,
Uh-huh.
she actually has done both. She's given money to both the institutions individually
Okay.
as well as to UNCF and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund to
Nice.
support their efforts. And I think some of that is recognizing that the UNCF as well as the Thurgood Marshall College Fund do have programs that help support those colleges and universities to address structural challenges that
Mhm.
they might have, whereas a Mackenzie Scott might not want to give to an HBCU where it's known that those institutions have some institutional or infrastructure challenges
Interesting.
that may or may not get resolved with those funds. But working through a UNCF or a Thurgood Marshall College Fund, they know that there's a support system that can help them address those challenges
I like
with the money that's been allocated.
very nice, very nice. All right. Also on April 27, 1927, Coretta Scott King was born. We know she's the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She's an author, activist, and in her own right, a civil rights leader.
For sure.
Her role is often reduced to a supporting role, right? But she, in her own right, again, was a strategist, an organizer, and a public leader, as well as an accomplished pianist and singer, right?
Mhm.
Coretta Scott was somebody when she met Martin Luther King Jr. And sometimes that gets washed away that they both were, the cream de la crop meeting each other. And so her life helps listeners see the civil rights movement as a network of leaders, not just a single figure. And we talk a lot about, women getting lost in the movement. Matter of fact, I think there's a book about the women of the movement uh,
Mhm.
who kind of get swept away and get pushed behind. There's an adage that says, behind every good man is a good woman, but she was walking side by side
Side by side, and
as
the
well as
pictures do tell.
pictures and raising them children.
Mhm.
And putting up with a whole lot of stuff. So we definitely want to honor her and the power of her voice for sure. She brought attention, and her presence kept the foot on the neck of the civil rights, and it transcended to broader audiences. So it's interesting that even after her husband was killed, she didn't give up.
Right.
She kept pushing through, which, is one of my critiques about the civil rights movement, especially if our parents' era, that it seemed like, when the leaders were murdered, then people kind of just faded into the background. But these women, Medgar Evers' wife, Coretta Scott King, these women kept pushing basically into their deaths, creating foundations and keeping the legacy of their husbands alive, but really keeping the momentum and the legacy of what the death symbolized and what they were trying to
Mhm.
accomplish alive.
One of the other things that we miss, because I guess we just expect for women to be the caregivers, right? That women are in there pushing the legacy of their husbands. They are also making sure that their children are very aware of things maybe that they wouldn't have known as children.
Right.
Right? That sometimes we protect our kids and we don't share information with them because we want to protect their innocence. But as our kids grow, I think it's important for us. And I think that definitely with Coretta Scott King, that she, at moments where it's age appropriate, shares additional insights into her husband's life and work so that their children would be able to continue the
Absolutely.
work and the legacy. And we see that
Yeah.
play out
Yeah.
very publicly with the King's kids.
Hmm. Yeah. Unlike other of the movement's children. That's so true. Yeah.
So, yes, shout out to Mrs. King, and we definitely continue to honor her memory.
Absolutely. So that's this week in Black history. What's up on our community calendar?
Well, April is Stress Awareness Month. So during this month, we get a chance to really get honest about what stress looks like, how it shows up in our bodies, and what we can actually do to help ourselves and others. So just so people are reminded, because I think it was our second episode, we actually talked about stress, but I think it's important for us to be reminded that stress is the body's response to demand. So
And
whatever is demanding
yeah.
something from us, our body responds to it. Stress is not always bad,
Mhm.
but chronic stress, especially if we don't take the time to recover, can really wear down our bodies. It can wear us down emotionally, and it definitely can wear down our health.
Yeah, chronic stress literally ages the body faster in African Americans than everybody else, but it literally ages the
Hmm.
body, which is very
I didn't know
interesting.
that.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Wow.
Yeah, but
That's
especially
important.
since black don't crack, but our bodies age in other ways that are not just physically visible, right? So we have
Mm-hmm.
arthritis and gout and, a lot of times obesity and we
Mm-hmm.
certainly have mental health issues that go unresolved. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely takes its toll on us.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a ton of sense. So when we think about stress, work stress is very common
Mhm.
across the globe. And
Absolutely.
so a large share of workers across the globe report feeling stressed out a lot of the day.
Mhm.
And that's something that Gallup reports in their state of the global workplace. I thought it was interesting that the Stress Management Institute reported that over 90% of employees face high stress in the past year, and nearly 1 in 4 feel unable to cope with their workplace stress.
Right. And it's interesting because now we have the employee assistance program and, all of these things that are supposed to help people
Mhm.
deal with stress.
Mm.
But, it's layered for us, right? We have the systemic
Yeah.
inequities, we have workplace bias, again, our healthcare disparities. Um, we as African Americans are always expected to kind of suck it up, right? But I want to
Mhm.
say that we're not exaggerating our stress. We're really under reporting it. We're not
Right.
acknowledging that we're stressed out, that we're burnt out, that
Mhm.
we're overwhelmed. We just keep piling on. And one of our favorite mantras is, "I'll figure it out. I'll get it done."
Mhm. Literally. I was feeling like that 5 a.m. this morning.
Right. All the things on your plate, on our plates, for sure. What it looks like in us is also financial pressure and generational responsibilities.
Mhm.
And I think we do that more than non-people of color do it,
Yeah.
right? Generational responsibilities.
Yeah.
Whereas we have multi-generations living in the home, we take care of our elderly, we take care of not only our children, but other people in our family's children.
Mhm.
As we believe in the village theory. Um,
Mhm.
take on all of these additional responsibilities that burden, weigh us down,
Mhm.
trying to meet the demands of everyone and often overlooking our own self-care.
Yeah. Stress also affects our sleep. Many adults already report not getting enough sleep. And so then when you add stress on top of your existing
Mhm.
lack of sleep, it definitely creates additional sleep problems. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I actually struggled with that myself for a time. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't sleeping well. And literally, my therapist said, when you're not able to sleep, I need you to write down the things that you're thinking about. And sure enough, the things that I was thinking about that were keeping me from going to sleep were work related tasks that I did not want to forget
Mm,
and things that I was stressing about at work.
yeah,
So definitely workplace issues do have a tendency to affect our sleep patterns, but definitely stress about anything, whether it's work related or not, definitely affects our sleep.
absolutely. And people in general have heart attacks and strokes on Sunday night because their work
Mm-hmm.
is going to happen on Monday morning. So definitely sleep. Chronic stress contributes to elevated cortisol levels, emotional or binge eating, as well as just overall neglect of our bodies. We have increased hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, higher cholesterol, because of all the things that we're doing to try and manage stress that are not necessarily the most healthy, but are
Mm-hmm.
soothing ways to manage our stress. And there's a book that's called "The Body Keeps the Score," and
Good
it talks
book.
about how we internalize the stress. Even when our mouths say, "Nope, I'm fine, I'm good." In the church, we'd be like, "All is well," lying through our teeth. I mean, sometimes we carry it well, but it doesn't mean that it's not eating away at us inside.
Mm-hmm.
Or even how our relationships are impacted, right? We talked about domestic violence, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we just be snapping on people. I know I'm guilty, going off on people without cause. The most minute thing might be the literal proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. And we find ourselves just in all kinds of scenarios because we haven't appropriately dealt with or coped with the type of stress that we have.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the fact that you brought in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, because our body does give us signs when it is stressed. Stress shows up as headaches,
Mm-hmm.
migraines, or tension headaches,
Mm-hmm.
a tight jaw or tight neck, stomach issues,
Mm-hmm.
fatigue, racing heart, changes in your appetite, even pains in different parts of your body can be
Sure.
linked to stress. When we start thinking about our behaviors, you mentioned like snapping at people, but also stress can cause people to withdraw. So they may retreat and not want to talk to anybody, just they want to be alone. So that's a behavioral sign of stress. Procrastination is another one. I know a lot of folks, and I'm guilty myself of procrastination, but sometimes when we're stressed out about things, we tend to procrastinate in getting them done.
Right.
And the one that I have been really working to overcome has been increasing sugar intake
Mm,
or increasing the intake of unhealthy foods
yeah.
when I'm stressed out like
Probably.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is definitely a behavioral sign when people are stressed, but not just the food that you eat, but some people consume alcohol when they're stressed, like we mentioned earlier, right? Other people consume a lot of caffeine when they're stressed. And all of it is bad. Stress might look like we're high functioning, we're operating efficiently. We've got a lot of balls in the air that we appear to be able to juggle, but you can still be struggling significantly.
Absolutely. And you talked about lack of sleep, which is definitely high up there, but some people oversleep. I'm a oversleep.
That's right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
one thing in the Black community we're going to do is take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might not sleep well at night, but we might take a nap during the day. But some people sleep
That's right.
excessively when they're stressed. Like the body just shuts down and we're like, we can't handle anymore. That
Mm-hmm.
definitely is something on my list that happens. I go in there and sleep. I'm supposed to be taking a power nap and be sleep 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
Which is, a stress response as well. And let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest, in the Black community, some of this is generational and historical trauma that keeps getting carried over into each generation. And we've talked about, at the top of the show, how the legacy of the civil rights movement, people breaking barriers and shattering glass ceilings, but the weight of all of that falls on each generation, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we always want to do better than our predecessors, whether we do or not, carrying the weight of we have to be, right? What's the
Mm-hmm. You have to be 10 times better.
in order to get the same recognition, quality,
Right.
entry level positions, all of that. And so that pressure has been passed down, at least to our generation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
age. I don't know if we're still passing that down to the younger generation. Maybe we should because this generation, Lord help. I mean, I say that not just for Black people, but especially for Black people, but we are aware statistically this is the first generation that's not doing better than their parents.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's why I kind of jokingly say maybe we should, but that trauma has been passed down into our bodies. And it started with slavery, segregation, all the
Mm-hmm.
and it gets passed down through our behaviors, right? Our survival patterns and our fears. I mean, we could do a whole segment, right, on just driving while Black.
Driving While Black. Yeah, I remember when Patrick Packer came and talked to us on that podcast, and he mentioned just the whole, what happens when the blue lights of the
Mhm,
police car go on
mhm,
and he's driving. So,
mhm,
yeah, all of that comes back. And we already carry a high cortisol, a high stress hormone level in our bodies
mhm.
anyway,
Yeah,
just because of that historical trauma that you mentioned. But then also, because of our environment, our diet, and all of that, we're already carrying a high level of stress
ab-
hormone in our body. So,
absolutely. And then we still we still have the trauma of actually going to a physician and making sure that we're getting the appropriate treatment, right?
Right.
Because in the back of our minds, we still remember experimentation and not having agency on our bodies and so forth. And while our generation would be like, oh, that's a time past, we still have that stress because even
Right.
if we are not being experimented on, we often have to justify our pain and ailments
Mhm.
to be taken seriously.
Mhm.
And just being able to be taken at our word that something is wrong. We are often faced with questions that allude to ulterior motives when we're just
Mhm.
medical attention for whatever our ailments
Right.
are.
We'll definitely link to our previous episode so that we're not repetitious. But one of the things I do think is important when it comes to stress management, and I will admit I struggle with this, is boundary management.
Ooh,
Saying no and being okay with saying no to
right.
protect my health, my sanity, even my relationships.
I just want to say that not having to give a long explanation for your no, no,
Correct.
sufficient. But if anything else, I don't want to is
I
equally
don't want
sufficient.
to.
You don't have to give a
Period.
whole paragraph dissertation on why the answer is no.
Right. Yeah. I'm reading this book right now called Essentialism, and I definitely encourage you to check it out. But it is really interesting to think about how we can reduce our stress with simply saying no and
Mm,
setting boundaries. So, Greg McEwen wrote the book Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And this week, I actually made a decision for me. I said no for me because I didn't want to. Right? And I had to be okay with saying no and recognizing that that was a decision that I was making for me.
mhm.
So other boundaries that protect us are things like telling people what our office hours are so that they don't expect you to be available and present and accessible to them outside of your established office hours.
Absolutely. Whatever your office hours are, make them be.
Right.
I like it.
Let them be that. Not feeling like you have to take every meeting that someone requests,
Mm,
right? That's time that someone else is taking up that maybe you don't have time for. And
right.
so being very intentional about the meetings that you take, protecting your sleep like it's an appointment.
An important point about the sleep is sleep quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're asleep, but we're not having quality of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
There's statistics that talk about being in like the REM atmosphere of sleep. That's when you the most quality of sleep. And so just paying attention to that. I love that you're saying make an appointment, to go to bed at night. But, in my house, I'm at least getting in bed by a certain time.
Right.
When I fall asleep,
That's
that's
another story.
what I'm gonna by a certain time to start helping my body relax. And I remember attending a therapist who recommended having a bedtime ritual. So whatever that looks like for you, taking a shower, putting on your music, turning off TV, reading your book. For me, I do all the skincare stuff that lets my body
Mm-hmm.
know we really about to shut it down. I'm wrapping my hair. Once I put that bonnet on, you can forget it. But whatever your routine is, I like to moisturize, my feet, my elbows, my hands, those are all things
Mm-hmm.
that are telling my body, yo, we getting ready to shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
So having that is important as well.
That's a good point. One of the things that they also say is good is for you to do deep breathing exercises before you go to bed
Mhm.
or meditation because the act of that deep breath in and out is also a signal to your body that it's time for rest.
Mhm.
It's time to sleep. There are lots of apps where you can go and get guided meditations. YouTube has plenty of videos, meditation videos for sleep specifically, because the type of deep breathing that you do when it's time for you to go to sleep is not necessarily the same type of deep breathing that you do if it's in the middle of the workday, right? So, yeah.
You talked about, setting boundaries in the book that you were reading, which there is a book out there called Boundaries. I recommend
Mm-hmm.
Townsend, another excellent book. But over the summer, I read Mel Robbins' book, Let Them. And that actually
Mm.
my life. And I hate that's such a simple I hate. That's such a concept. Changed my life the way that it, but just letting people do them, like letting people think whatever they want to think about you, letting people either take your advice or
Yes.
your advice, letting people live their lives, even if it's detrimental
Uh-huh.
to themselves. Like that just freed me up.
Mhm.
Such a stressful and spiritual and emotional way to be. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, they only got, ooh, let them. Or they would
Just let 'em.
let them.
Yeah. But I think particularly Black women, it's so natural, it's inherent in us to take care of other people, right? And so, even when no one has asked us to do that, we just
Yeah.
take it on.
Yes. Nobody asked you to. And then you mad and resentful and stressed out.
Right.
People ask us
Yes.
to do enough. Let's not take on any
Don't take on any other responsibilities. So, yeah, so you even have to set boundaries with
with
yourself when it
yourself.
comes to
Yes.
those things so that you can reduce your stress.
Absolutely. We also want to normalize some things. I'm a big proponent of therapy and or
Me
counseling,
too.
whichever makes you comfortable, not just with your friends, but with the professional who's trained in some things, as well as someone who can
Definitely
be
a professional.
objective, right? Objectivity, I think, is the main portion of therapy, as well as
Mhm.
then undergirding that with some tools to help you cope and manage
Mhm.
throughout your life. I personally am a component of Jesus in therapy because a lot of times, especially Christians, will say that, oh, we don't need therapy. We'll take it to the Lord in prayer. Oh, I have my pastor. No, you need some therapy
Mhm.
deconstruct some of the
Right.
lies you told yourself and have been told
Yep.
in your life, some of the trauma that you've
Yep.
been through. And trauma is a hot topic word right now, but we don't, especially in the Black community, we don't call it trauma, but we done been through
Mhm.
stuff, right? We talked
That's
about our
right.
daily living can be traumatic as well as the actual things that have happened in our lives or that we've witnessed
Mhm.
and grandparents' lives. And we need to deal with that stuff because we keep carrying it around. But I'm also a proponent of Jesus therapy plus meds.
Yes.
Some of us need to be medicated, right?
Mhm.
Wouldn't have a lot of the domestic violence, a lot of cultural violence, a lot of neighborhood violence, suicide, if we allowed ourselves, our family members, our friends to be medicated. So you can have all
Mhm.
you can have Jesus, you can have therapy, plus you can have medication to
Mhm.
help you, deal. Because the reality of it is, some of it is not just trauma induced, but some of it is a chemical imbalance.
Right.
And so, the same way that you'll take medicine for your high blood pressure, for your cholesterol, for
Mhm.
diabetes,
Mhm.
sometimes to address the chemical imbalance in your brain, you need medication.
Mhm.
So, most of us wouldn't say, yeah, we pray for alleviation of high blood pressure, whatever the case may be, but we wouldn't be so ignorant. And yes, I'm using the term ignorant to be like, I don't need that. I'm just going to pray. And okay, you're going to pray
Right.
and drop dead. So you're going to pray and have a mental health crisis if
Mhm.
utilize all the resources that are available in your bag.
I concur.
Take your mental health days. Like you don't just got to call out of work sick. Yeah.
Yep.
Call out mental health day.
Mhm.
I have gotten to the point if I need to call out of work, I don't even always tell them why. I can't take
You don't need to. Schedule that PTO.
oh,
There's
that part,
no reason
that part,
no reason for
schedule
you
your
to give
PTO,
them a
but if you
reason.
feel like you ain't gonna be able to do what you need to do, I'm not gonna make it today, right? That's what
Right.
those PTO days are for.
It's a lot. There's so much that we can do. Simple things to even the more challenging things for us to do, like acknowledge that we need to seek professional help,
Mhm.
that we need medication to manage some of our challenges. But like we always talk about, is small steps. Small steps will help you get to a better place.
Okay.
So take some small steps. First, recognize that you are stressed out. That's the first thing. If you're
Yeah.
recognizing changes in your body and your mood, you need to pay attention to that and decide that you want to do something about it. Then get active, take a walk,
Mhm.
move your body, do something
Yeah.
so that you can burn off some of that stress that you might be experiencing, but then also, do the other things, rest,
Mhm.
sleep,
Mhm.
seek joy in different activities,
Mhm.
but then also seek professional assistance to help you
Sure.
out.
Find ways to laugh about life, listen to our music. Historically, music has always been soothing to the soul.
Right.
So listen to your music, find what makes you feel good. I'll tell you, well, knows my playlist can go from ratchet to gospel to hip hop to
Same.
R&B. I got a little country in there. Whatever's gonna make me feel good. I skip around till, we
That's
get
right.
to where we need to be. So definitely want to look at that.
Mm,
Taking away the guilt. I'm allowed to rest without guilt. I'm allowed to not carry the things that are not mine. And let's be clear. We're giving you these tools not to say that the stress in your life is going to disappear, but these tools are to help you manage the stress
mhm.
lot better. But as we talked about, some of the stress that we're carrying is not ours. So we need to be okay with letting that go as well.
Mhm.
Taking care of our minds, our spirits, and our soul is part of honoring our life, right? So we just want to leave those nuggets with you all to let you know that you're not in this alone. You certainly do have resources and some type of community that can help you manage these things, but also to let you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel or in the middle of the tunnel because you're not at the end yet.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you for that information on Stress Awareness Month. What's on tap for today's herbal tea? So, as you all know, the herbal tea segment is an opportunity for us to talk about what you all are gossiping about and to offer up something beneficial to our community's collective well being. We consider it healthier gossip. So, T, what's up first for our herbal tea segment today?
Gosh, every week we try and make this thing healthy, but we struggle.
It's a struggle
Pray for
sometimes.
us, saints. Pray for us. Speaking of saints, oh my goodness, Marvin Sapp's wife. You know what? I didn't even do the due diligence of looking up her actual name. I'm so annoyed. But Mrs. Sack, the current Mrs. Sack, got up in the pulpit on Easter Resurrection Sunday morning and took an opportunity. I don't know what she was about to do, but the clickbait that we saw was her going off on the congregation, telling them that basically everybody's now poor. The Lord has been good to her. She's very financially blessed. That people need to stop thinking that they little funky $2 in the offering plate is what contribute to the cost of their wedding expenses, including a helicopter ride, which she says, I bought the helicopter. And so I want to talk about the fact that is it necessary for people to keep going off in the pulpit on Sunday morning? As a person of clergy, I agree that we are human and fallible. Stuff get on our nerves. But it's Sunday morning mic check. The top.
Easter Sunday, no less.
Oh, the annoyance was resurrected in her that day. And we've seen this a couple of times where pastors, a pastor's wife, or clergy is just using that platform to air their personal frustrations. Is that the time and
hmm
place for that?
Absolutely not. It is not. We in the church talk about people standing behind the sacred desk,
Sacred.
right? It's sacred. There is called that for a reason. I think that over time and as people have maybe strayed away from some of the, I don't know, some of the traditional aspects of church,
Mm,
we have also then lost sight of, the fact that there are things that are sacred.
yeah.
And so, being in the pulpit is one of those things
Mhm,
that, we've traditionally seen as sacred. And so for anyone to be in a pulpit, whatever your pulpit looks
mhm,
like, right?
mhm,
For someone to be in a pulpit and to address the people in a way where it's not thus says the Lord,
mhm. That thing's the
then
Lord.
no.
Ooh, right.
No, it's not appropriate.
And when you and I first started talking about this, we were saying that these congregations where we're seeing publicly, the chastisement
hmm
of the masses from the pulpit, these congregations are bad. And, we
Mhm.
talked about the fact that people like drama, right? That's why we even have a Urkel T. That's why there are hot topics. That's why TMZ exists,
Mhm.
right? People love drama. But the
Right.
word says, and I don't want to be too preachy on this, that we lift up Christ, he'll draw all men unto him. And so if we're not lifting up Christ, and if we're saying that pop culture, churches like drama and tea and all of these things, then what are you going there for?
Mhm.
Is
Right.
that what you wanna be known for? People coming to your church because they enjoy drama? Or
Mhm.
do you wanna be known for the fact that you're preaching the gospel and impacting and I don't wanna say they're not impacting lives or doing things in the community, but, just to know that this is not the time and the place for that. As those congregations are packed, we also, though, are seeing a falling away from religion
Right.
period of,
Mhm.
Jewish synagogues, mosques, churches
Mhm.
are less and less full in the average congregations. And when we really start having conversations with people that are not going to church, it's about stuff like this.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. As you alluded to, there is a time and a place
Mhm,
for those types of comments and lessons
mhm,
that your congregation can learn. I think the pulpit should be reserved
mm.
for truly for messages that are from the Lord. And I am sure that the Lord was not telling her to say that.
You get up and
Um,
say all of that, right. Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. We coming to see the Lord.
And it's not to say that there is not a place for the church to address gossip,
Mhm,
for the church to address members of the church, the congregation, to discuss money issues or questions about how the church spends its money. There are definitely opportunities, and I'm sure even in their church, they have opportunities
mhm.
for the members to
Like
come and talk
board
about those things.
meetings and things of that nature.
Exactly.
Church
Right.
conferences.
But at that time, when she did it on Easter Sunday from the pulpit,
Right,
yeah, that wasn't the time
right.
nor the place.
And I will say on the flip side, parishioners, we need to stop being concerned about how leadership spends their money, right? Because if they weren't asking for an additional funds from the church, then this is not even something that needs to be addressed. I spend my
Right.
money on what I want to spend it on.
Mm,
You pay me a salary, I do it as I need to with my salary.
mhm.
And so that needs to be addressed as well.
Agreed.
All right.
All right. What else?
Well,
In other news.
in other news, looks like we're gonna talk about all married things today. Did want to bring up Kiki Palmer has recently been trending because she made some comments, and it's not a new phenom, but she made some comments about the fact that she don't want to live with nobody. So she didn't know she went or
Mm.
they could get married, they could be together, but she want them to live in their own house. She don't want nobody living in her house. And
Hmm.
so this is something that has been resurfacing, but I think we're seeing it more prevalent with celebrities, and then it comes up in everyday relationships like you and I.
Right.
And it's called being together apart,
Mhm.
technical term that they're using for it. Together but apart, TBA, together but apart.
Mhm.
People are saying, no, you live in your own separate household, or no, you live on your wing of the house, or we sleep in
Mhm.
separate bedrooms. And I wanted to talk about this because as a single woman, I was having a conversation the other day with someone, and it's like those who are wanting something quote unquote traditional are considered the weird ones now, or the
Mm.
ones.
Hadn't even thought about it like that. Okay.
Yeah, and so when we see more people in the news or, on social media saying, "No, you don't need all of that," to be happy, it deconstructs, um, traditional norms and once again, those who might want a commitment.
Mhm.
I don't know, what's your thoughts?
Hmm. This is loaded. Wow. So I can totally see both sides of this argument. I'll tell you why. So I grew up as an only child.
Okay.
And so I think sometimes as only children, you become accustomed to having your own stuff.
Mhm.
You know where your stuff is, you know where it's placed, you know what it is to be in solitude if you want to, right? You don't have to worry about people being loud when you want to be quiet or vice versa. And so I do understand this whole idea of you have your space and I have my space. And, we can make it work. But I have also been in a space, my husband and I have been in a space where I was working out of state.
Uh-huh.
And so we did live apart during the week.
Mhm.
And there are lots of couples
Mhm.
who are doing that. And so we experienced I had an apartment somewhere else. We had our home here. I would be gone for a week. Either he would come down or I would come back home on the weekends. And so in that sense, we are living together, but separately, but there is this coming back together at defined periods during the week. And so there are some things that you get accustomed to when you live like that. For example, where you have your own space and you have your own routines, you have your way of doing things.
Right.
And I can see where people could really appreciate that. However, I will say there are things that come with living together that help you grow closer in your relationship.
Okay.
Being in close proximity has health benefits,
Uh,
right? So there are health benefits for you being close to your partner, your significant other, and especially as it relates to stress reduction,
sure.
right? There's data out there to support the physiological changes that happen in your body when you're physically close to your significant other and how
Mhm.
it can reduce your stress levels. So there is that. But then also you in more ways are forced to work together.
Right.
You're forced to communicate. You're forced to cohabit a space that automatically just draws you closer together. And when we're talking about being in relationship,
That's
then like that's what being in a relationship is, right? Being
exactly
together.
right. Because otherwise, you're single.
Correct.
Because what's the
Yeah.
benefit? That's where I'm trying to understand the benefit of being apart together, right? There are certain, like you mentioned, you're traveling for work. You have to do what you got to do. Certainly, these celebrities, they have busy lifestyles, all of that.
Hmm.
But if we're not going to be together, then what would be the benefit of us being in a monogamous relationship, right? Like, why are we together if we're not together? Be able to talk from home?
So I'll say this. There are some things that I think are alleviated when you live separately from somebody. And you can still be in relationship and I guess you can still be close. And I guess this is the point that Kiki Palmer is making when she said what she said. When you are in relationship with someone, you are in relationship with everything that comes with that package,
Mhm.
right? And so maybe there are some things that annoy you
Mhm.
about that person and the stuff that they bring with them to the relationship. Some people might see that living apart allows them to place all of those things that they don't like at
Okay.
the other house,
Okay.
right? You don't have to bring it over to your house. So maybe you don't like how that person picks up or doesn't pick up after
Right.
themselves.
Right.
Or maybe your routines don't align. So
Mhm.
maybe you're a night owl and maybe the other person is a morning person.
Mhm.
Maybe the way that you go about doing things is just very different.
Yeah.
And so maybe the argument that she would make is that if we live apart, then that person can continue doing all the things that they do.
Mhm.
Right. And they don't have to worry about me trying to change them. Right. Because they say you
Right.
shouldn't try to
Right.
change people anyway. And then I don't have to worry about that person not liking the way I do things in my house, my morning routine, the fact that I don't go to bed until whenever,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So in that case, then maybe being in a relationship would be easier
Well,
because now we don't have to change these fundamental aspects of ourselves to try to accommodate the other person that could potentially make us not like each other.
well, yes, and I guess this is why we're playing it out here, right? And at the end of the day, to our listeners, right? Do you boo boo? To each his own, right?
Right.
But I also think that we're taking compromise off the table, right?
This is
We're
true.
we're we're taking off how to get along, how to play in the sandbox together.
Right.
We're taking that off the table as well. In addition to, it's fine for celebrities to make these cases, but who got the
Who
money to
got
be
money to afford 2
doing
cases?
all of this? Part of the
Trust me,
reason
because
to
it ain't cheap.
cohabitation is to
Right.
save money. And I definitely don't want that to be the reason people move in or stay together. But
Mhm.
I just feel like there could be a breakdown of intimacy if we're not together the majority of the time. And I don't mean just sex. I mean, how
Mhm.
all the things that you mentioned, communication,
Mhm.
interaction. And then also, what are we teaching our children? Are we also teaching our children that compromise, playing in the sandbox together, that's all off the table?
Yeah.
And so I think that this systemically can create a greater issue, right? Because then, as Black people, when we talk about the fact that we often have multi generational households, we're saying mama and them can live with us, but we can't live with daddy, or we can't live
Well,
with
some people would say, "I don't want nobody to live with me."
facts on facts on facts.
Right? So there is
Yeah, I'm
that.
not opposed to that thought process, but
And I do hear you in terms of the intimacy part, because when you live apart, you really do have to work harder
hmm,
at the intimacy part,
okay,
right? Not just the sex, but like staying connected.
yeah,
You have to be more intentional about your communications,
uh-huh,
how you communicate via text message, making time to get on FaceTime calls and talk to your boo. Being more intentional about even sending flowers or creating opportunities for you all to get away and spend some intentional couple time together. There are couples who have made it work. So one of the couples that I think we can look at would be like Shirley
yeah,
Ralph and Senator Vincent
yeah,
Hughes, right?
yeah,
They, at least on the surface,
right,
appear to have a remarkable marriage, but they do live apart. They
yeah,
have very different lives professionally,
right,
where it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to live together, but it appears that they are very intentional
hmm,
about how they foster that intimacy and have sustained that over the decades. So yeah, you do have to be more intentional if you're going to live apart.
sure,
But I think it's harder to live apart when you live in the same city
right.
than it is if you're on 2 different coasts or in different states and that kind of
Exactly,
thing.
yeah, or you live across the street, or you live on the
Right?
other.
Y'all live side by side.
I don't know. It just, again, it sounds abnormal to those of us who grew up with the ideology of traditional households.
Mhm.
And again, I think between that and polyamorous relationships, which of course has been going on since the beginning of time, but now we're putting all of these new labels and terms and definitions on things, just makes it the dating pool more difficult than it already is.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so I don't know. Some food,
Because I can't even imagine having that conversation while you're early in your relationship or dating somebody. Like, hey, so how you feel about
right?
being married but not living together?
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all let us know if you've had that conversation. Hit us up. Let
We
us know
would
how it went.
love to hear your
We'd love
comments
to
and
know.
thoughts on this one. We together, but we not together.
Ooh, and who house you gonna go to for holidays?
Right. And then, I don't know if it's empowering or a Jedi mind trick that, I could see men being all for this, but now women are like,
Mhm.
no, 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 that's what I want too. Do you? I mean, I'm not knocking it, but I just feel like, I don't know, this might be some Jedi mind trick to let men do whatever they want to do.
Mm. Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's all other things.
Well, all right, fam, that's it for today's episode. Don't forget, we are tracking our number of subscribers so that we know when we need to record our Life More Abundantly After Dark episode. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you do. Make sure that you share. What else?
Please do. I have a lot of people asking, when are y'all going to do video? When are y'all going to do video? I
Mm.
think if we had 100 subscribers and we did
Mm-hmm.
podcast Life More Abundantly After Dark, that might be a good time to do a special video edition. What you think?
Ooh, I like that idea. All right.
So y'all got to subscribe. Yeah, like,
I mean, why y'all want to see us on camera?
I know. Y'all like our
What
voice
is
like
that
that.
about? Mhm.
Okay. So next week, We'll be talking about a very important topic, which is organ donation. So please, please, please join us next week. We already know you're going to have a lot of questions and comments. We like it. Send your comments, especially about the entire show, but especially about being together but apart. Send an email or a voice note to us at podcast@enjoylifemoreabundantly.com. We also are getting ready to open up a merchandise store. So let us know what kind of merch you
Yes.
might be interested in. And we'll let you know when that site goes live.
And if this conversation helped you, please like it and share it with someone you love, and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. So until next week,
Enjoy life.
and life more abundantly. Cheers!